We ready? Woohoo! All right. So my name is Christie Berry. I have a doctorate in education and a license in Alabama to work with clinically mental health patients. I have I do integrative mental health, so I talk to patients about their gut and about their food and about all of those things because they all interfere with how we think. But today, that's not what I'm going to talk about. Today, I'm going to talk about how many of us have changed our diet and changed our lifestyle, and still we feel good for a little while, and then all of a sudden, we're not feeling good again. And we don't know why. And we've done all the work, right? We've done everything. We've started eating right. We've taken our sugar out of our diet. We've started plant based eating. We've done all the things that everybody told us we need to do. And yes, we felt good, but now not feeling so good again. And we don't know why. Did I change my diet? Did I do something different? What's going on? Got that inflammation down. I was feeling really great. And then all of a sudden, I started feeling bad again. We're going to talk a little bit about why that happens. But first, I want to tell you about my story. Okay? So, I was in the military and I was an EMT, so I learned all the medical jargon that I was supposed to learn. And then I had two children, both with special needs, and one of them was born and had autism. So I started changing his diet. And then the other one was born and had cerebral palsy. So I started changing her diet. Okay. And so we started changing the diets as we were going along, right? And I'm going, and I'm not feeling very good. So I was like, yeah, I don't know what's going on here. So I started changing my diet. Now I'd already changed it. But what I found out was I had an autoimmune disease. And so I went to the doctor and they're like, oh, you have this autoimmune disease. You're going to be on this medicine for the rest of your life. I was 36. I did not want to be on medicine for the rest of my life. Didn't want that. So I began learning more, right? That's what we do, right? We keep learning more. Okay, so I learned more, started making some additional changes, found out, I think the speaker before me said the same thing. You can heal autoimmune diseases. So I was like, okay, I can do this. And I made those changes and I started feeling better. And then pretty soon I started feeling bad again. And I'm going, but I did all the changes. I don't understand. Sometimes the most basic root needs to be repaired before the rest of us can heal. Sometimes that's spiritual. Sometimes that's mental. Sometimes that's physical. What's the root? So I began learning the root of my problem. And it was through understanding the root that I was able to flourish. And now at 62, I'm not on any medications. Pretty healthy. Go to the doctor every 2 years. They say, nothing wrong with you. Come back in 2 years. Yeah, I mean, it's so amazing to me because nobody tells anyone that there's a root that we need to fix. Not only that, but once that root is fixed, you need to know how to keep it there. Nobody's teaching that. I don't know anybody who teaches that. Nobody. I'm going to go to the health food store and I'm going to ask them what to do for this problem, and they're going to tell me to take these 6,000 medications or vitamins and supplements and change my diet. That's good. When do I get fixed? I had somebody come into my office and said, we went to this doctor, did all these lab work, tests. I think it was like $1,500 worth of tests that they did. And I'm sitting there listening to their story, and they're saying, and then he wanted me to take $500 worth of supplements every month. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. How is a person going to do this? Unless you're rich, and not me. I ain't rich. Okay. It's not sustainable. How can we learn what is the root? How do we fix it? And how do we maintain it? Because if the root is fixed and our body is healthy, we don't need to stay on supplements for the rest of our life. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Stay on those supplements for the rest of our lives, spending $500 every month. And I know that the majority of you have been out there spending a lot of money on supplements. I know that you have, because I was there too. But when you get to the root, you don't have to spend the money on the supplements anymore because you fixed it. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. All right. So, it's not about what we eat. There was a saying, you are what you eat. But the reality is, it's not what you eat, it's what you're absorbing. The majority of our health diseases come from our unhealthy microbiome. We are not able to break down the large particles of food small enough to those micronutrients to be able to absorb those micronutrients and keep us fed at the cell level. Microbiome breaks down our food, breaks it down into those little tiny pieces so that our body can absorb nutrients and utilize those nutrients. Micronutrients are absorbed all along our digestive tract. Some are absorbed at the stomach level, some are absorbed in the duodenum, the large intestine, and some are even absorbed in the small intestine, and some are absorbed in the large intestine. So what's happening? Why aren't we absorbing our nutrients? Let's see, I have a light. Ha-ha! So on the right-hand side of this slide, you can see that there is cells or epithelial cells that are separated and allowing large particles of food to get in and not breaking down those good nutrients that we need to absorb. On the left side, that's a healthy intestine or a healthy system. And when the system starts to break down, we're not able to break those foods down. And those large particles get into our bloodstream. And when that happens, unfortunately, it causes an inflammatory response. Let's move a little farther than that. If we are having an inflammatory response to the foods that we're eating every day, I'm eating that healthy food. I had an avocado, good healthy fat, right? That's what everybody's telling us to do, right? Except that avocado, every time I eat it, is causing me to have an inflammatory response. Because there's openings. Some people call it leaky gut. There's openings in our intestines allowing large particles of that avocado, that good food for us, to get into our bloodstream. And now, every time I eat an avocado, I have an inflammatory response. However, you may not know it for 4 days. You may not even know that it's happening for 4 days. So you don't know what it's connected to. Was it that avocado or was it the onion I ate last night? And you won't know. So let's talk a little bit about the microbiome. Just briefly. We have about 30% of our cells in our body are human cells. That means that about 70% of the cells in our body are microbes. They're not human. They're symbiotic little buggies that live in our body. I know that sounds scary, good and bad. The majority of our cells in our body are microbial cells. Now, the good news is most of them are good cells. And when we have good bacteria and good cells in our body, microbial cells in our body, we're healthy. It's what keeps us on our feet. Bad news is sometimes we get too much of the bad microbial cells in our body. The microbiome activates the longest nerve in our body called the vagus nerve. I was having this conversation earlier with somebody. The vagus nerve innervates from our brain every single organ in our body. It runs every single system, cardiovascular system, every single system. It's pretty important nerve there, huh? What do you think? Yeah, pretty important nerve. And if our microbiome is not healthy, then that nerve cannot do its work. So it's really important, because if we don't have a healthy cardiovascular system, if we don't have a healthy vagus nerve, if we don't have a healthy digestive system, if we don't have a healthy respiratory system, if we don't have how many systems are there? Endocrine system, it keeps going. Keeps going. We've got so many systems, and they're all relying on the microbiome to keep the vagus nerve healthy. And this is a piece nobody's telling us. Wrong way. All right, so what are some of the things that can really, really hurt the microbiome or the vagus nerve? I am absolutely positive that not a single person in this room is stressed. Not a single one. So this is not for you, okay? But this is for you to know so you can share with all your friends that are stressed out, okay? All right? We're not stressed out, but we have friends. I have friends. My friends are stressed out, yeah. So this is for your friends that are stressed out, not for you. All right. There are different kinds of stress. Everybody says stress, they think of that first one, the mental stress. Oh my gosh, I'm mentally stressed. Yes, that is a type of stress. We also have emotional stress, you know. Emotional stress. We have physical stress. How many of you work out every day for 2 hours? You can tell I don't. Okay. If you overdo it, that can be physical stress. Sometimes having an illness is a lot of physical stress. So if we have illness or dis-ease, physical stress. Are you ready for this? Nutritional stress? What does that mean? Nutritional stress. Yeah, see, I see that look on your face. That's like, what in the heck is she talking about? All right, nutritional stress. Remember, we were just talking about that vagus nerve and that microbiome and that thing that goes from the head to the body and the microbiome and all the good bacteria and all of that. If you are not absorbing nutrients, you are experiencing nutritional stress. If you are eating the very best food on the planet and you're not absorbing, you might as well just go take it and flush it down the toilet, because that's where it's going. You can buy expensive organic food if you want to. It's only going to go in the toilet. You will not absorb the nutritional content of that food. Scary, huh? I'm not going to go through the 6,000 ways that stress affects your body. There they are. We have short-term stress and we have long-term stress. Short-term stress. You're driving in Huntsville on the parkway. Somebody runs over in front of you and slams their brakes on. What happens? Your heart gets, you're like mad. Your heart's beating hard. You're breathing heavy. You're ready to kill, okay? Your foot automatically went on that brake. And after all of that, you had to find a place to pull over because you couldn't even function. You're like shaking. Okay, that's a normal stress response. That's what we see when we have something called a short-term stress, a sympathetic response. That's a fancy word for stress. What's happening? We see something scary. The brain alerts the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve goes into the body. It says, do all this stuff. I might be eaten by a tiger. Okay? Might get in an accident. especially in Huntsville. Yeah. So that's what's happening over here on this short-term stress slide. What about long-term stress? Long-term stress, been through a divorce, been through an illness, taking care of children for a long time, dealing with the health of a family member. There's a lot of reasons that we have long-term stress. One of those jobs that you wish you didn't have for 5 years. Guess what happens? When you are finished with that long-term stress, your body has climatized to this level of alertness, and it doesn't go down. If I slam the brake on and I pull off because I need to calm down, I calm down. Okay? The body goes into what's called a parasympathetic response, so it calms you down. All the right hormones are kicking in, all the good stuff. The vagus nerve is doing its job to calm you down, calms down all of the responses in the body, calms down the brain. However, in this long-term stress, you don't have a chance to pull off the road and calm down because it just keeps coming and keeps coming and keeps coming and keeps coming. The body says, okay, this is the new normal. I'm going to go ahead and adjust to that. And I'm going to make all these chemicals up here so I can keep you on your feet. So now your body is in this constant stress response, even though you may no longer be in that stress. And it will stay there for years unless you know what to do to fix it. Stress destroys the microbiome. It kills the good bacteria. It's not your friend. It has a purpose in cases of driving in Huntsville, but it's not a good thing for long term. And no one's teaching us, back to that thing, no one's teaching us how to fix that. You know, went through a 10-year divorce, stressed out the whole time. 10 years later, after the divorce is final, my body is still in a bad way, and I'm getting worse, and I don't know why. And everybody's like, oh, you're just getting old. Here, take this pill. That's what they tell them. So there is a connection, we know, through the vagus nerve of the gut and the brain and the body. We just went through that. And when this connection is not healthy, there is opportunity for bad things to enter into your brain. It causes mental health issues. The brain-blood barrier, I don't know if anybody's heard of that before, but that's supposed to protect your brain from all the bad stuff. It's no longer capable of doing that. So mentally, you still feel tired. You still feel not all the way that you need to be feeling, and you don't know why. Our heart isn't working as well. All of our systems are kind of off. And I'm going to say to the ladies in the audience, you went to the doctor and said, you know, I just don't feel like myself. And the doctor says, oh, it's okay. You just had a baby. And you go back to the doctor 2 years later and you say, I just don't feel like myself. And he says, oh, it's okay. You're just getting ready to go through menopause. And you go back to the doctor and you say, I just don't feel myself. And he says, oh, it's okay. You're just getting older. And they keep giving you excuses for what's wrong. And the reality is you probably have a real issue, but they don't know how to fix it without a pill. All right. So our gut is responsible for ensuring that everything else is working, right? I'm sorry. The gut is important. It's responsible for the liver to work properly. One of the biggest unseen diseases in the United States today is fatty liver disease. One of the worst. People don't know they have it. It's killing people every day. Fatty liver disease. Why do we have fatty liver disease? Did you know that the intestines and the vagus nerve are directly connected to that? Absolutely. Lungs, Lung cancer, lung issues, COPD, directly connected to our gut. Kidneys and how they work. Keeping the levels of our electrolytes, keeping the levels of our salt, those levels are kept through the microbiome and the vagus nerve so that your kidneys can function properly. Heart, we just talked about that one, but cardiovascular, we have a microbiome around our heart. If it's not healthy, if we're not absorbing nutrients, we're back at the same problem. Almost every issue can be linked back to some type of an issue in the gut. But no one is telling us how to fix that. So just a little bit more on that. 70% of the blood flow to the liver comes directly from our gut. You know, you thought you had veins, right? That blood flow comes directly from our gut. For the lungs, researchers are currently looking at how the gut microbiome impacts asthma, COPD, pulmonary diseases, pneumonia, and the development of cancers. Kidneys. Researchers are looking at the role microbiota plays in kidney disease and how microbiota increases the release of toxins in chronic kidney disease. And finally, the heart. Researchers are finding poor gut microbiome and poor mouth microbiome playing chronic roles in cardiovascular disease. So, we talked earlier about the brain. Got my brain and my gut picture here. They call the gut our second brain. You didn't know you had two brains, did you? I think my husband's is in his little toe. I don't know. But the gut-brain axis, I've talked a lot about this already, but I just want to reiterate how important that connection is. Okay? There are so many things. If you have an overgrowth of candida, the brain is affected. If you have an overgrowth of bad bacteria, the brain is affected. Now, how do I get those, Dr. Berry? I don't know how. I don't understand. Well, have you had one antibiotic? How many of you have had one antibiotic in your life? Just one. Yeah? Most everybody? Okay. It takes 2 years for your gut to rebuild after one antibiotic if you do nothing else but just eat healthy. 2 years. When that antibiotic goes into your system, it is indiscriminate. It eats and kills every single bacteria, good and bad. Every one of them. It doesn't care. So what just happened to my microbiome? All the good bacteria, it's gone. It takes 2 years to rebuild that. I'm not just talking about the microbiome in the gut. I'm talking about the microbiome in your whole body. How many? 70% of our body is microbiome or microbes. That's what I'm talking about. One antibiotic, one course of antibiotics, one surgery with antibiotics, one. We have to know what to do with that. You know, going to the doctor is important if I break my leg. If I have to have surgery because, you know, something's wrong, I need to know how to fix that. I can't just spend my next 2 years hoping I get healthy again, that I'm eating right. Because, you know, come on, we're human. We don't always eat right. It's just the way it is. You know, I have to stop at someplace and get something once in a while. I'm not going to give anybody any kudos today. There are lots of factors that influence that connection between our gut and our brain. Lots of factors. What are our genetics? You know, my mom had this problem and her mom had this problem and her mom had this problem, so I'm going to have this problem. Not necessarily. but it can be a factor. We can't forget epigenetics. Our environment changes our genetic environment. So if we change how we eat and we change how we live, our genetics can change. Those switches can be flipped off so we don't have to be a consumer of the same health issue that my parents had. What's your diet like? How was your birth experience? These are all questions, I ask people and they're like, well, what do you mean? Well, what happened when you were born? Were you cesarean? Mom had to have an antibiotic for that. Guess what you just had before you were even born? An antibiotic. How healthy was mom while she was carrying you? Oh, well, she wasn't that great. Guess what? You just inherited her microbiome. These things are important. People don't know they're important. Did you know that was important? Did you know that it was important? I mean, a lot of people don't know it's important. That how my mom's health was while she was pregnant or before she was pregnant with me affects the rest of my life. It affects the rest of my life because her health is going to start. My health is going to start where her health was when I was born. So if she's not healthy, I'm not going to be healthy. And I don't even get the same start she had. Of course, we already know, and I'm not going to harp on the environment and how the environment affects our microbiome and all the rest of our body. We already know that. The environment is really bad. Taking medications, not healthy. We already know. I'm not even going to preach to the choir here because I know you guys, that's not in your wheelhouse if you can help it. Drugs, of course, the ones that we shouldn't be taking, besides the medication ones, have a really bad, lethal effect on our body and our microbiome. Exercise. I know, I already said I don't go to the gym every day. You can tell, got an extra tire or two here. But exercise is really important. And especially as you get older, it's really important, even if you don't do anything but stretch. Just stretch. Stay flexible. Keep the body moving all the time. Majority of people who end up in nursing homes at 65 and 70, after they're there for 1 year, no longer can walk. Why? I'm old and I don't get up out of this chair or bed. The more they stay sedentary, the less mobility they have. If you stay in your chair for 1 year, you will not be walking. What about, we already know we need to eat well. What about how we think about things? What about our cognitive sources? Do we always look for the bad? Do we always worry about stuff? Do we have a lot of good faith? Faith is important. It keeps us on the positive. Keeps us looking at what's the possibilities. Because, if it's just up to me, they ain't so good. But the possibilities are really good when we have faith. Okay, so the faith is a really important part. Keeping our cognitive wheels turning in the proper direction is really important. And if they're negative, it destroys the microbiome. Have you ever known those people that are always negative? Everything they say is always negative, negative, negative all the time. It's like, oh, woe is me, like Eeyore. For those of you that are old enough to know who Eeyore is. Just like Eeyore under his black cloud. Okay, he's just going along. How you doing, Eeyore? I'm okay. We all know at least one person like that, right? The majority of people with that negative, consistently negative emotion die at a consistently younger age than people with positive attitudes. It's science. The research is out there. So we just have to make sure we're staying positive all the time, right? And then I'll be healthy forever. No, not exactly. There's a whole bunch of other things that influence that, but that's one important one. I have a picture that I give my clients with an arrow on each end. And I say, you see the middle line? And they say, yeah. And this side it's beautiful green, and this side it's red. The middle line, that's where no symptoms lie. There are no symptoms there. So the doctor says, here's a pill so we can get you to that point. Okay? I say, let's get over here in the green so we don't have to worry about the pill. But here's the deal. Which way are you facing? Which way are you facing? You might have terminal cancer, but if you're facing the green side, it's harder to take a step backwards. You go backwards slower, which is death, than if you were facing death and going toward it. Okay? My father just passed away of lung cancer. He was 85 years old, and the most positive man I've ever met. He's like, I'm going to live until I die, and I'm going to do everything I can until then. The most positive man. They told him he had 3 months. 10 months later, he passed away. They were worried he wouldn't make it 3 months. He's like, nope, I'm going to keep going till I can't go no more. Positive attitude. Going to get you a long way on keeping the microbiome healthy. We've already talked about stress. Won't talk about that. Social interactions. This one is really important and not looked at very often. We need to make sure that our social interactions are positive and that we have a social support network. I'm going to talk just a little about this COVID generation. We have spent so many years now not connecting in a real face-to-face, hand-in-hand connection. This is not healthy. We've got to get back out here. We've got to meet humans in their space. We all carry an energy, okay? All of us. And it's the energy that we pick up from each other that builds us up and grows us. Without that energy, just like the energy from the sun to a plant, without that energy, we don't do so well. And we're seeing it. The mental health community, again, mental health practitioner here, I'm always looking at that piece. The mental health community, the mental health epidemic is getting so bad. It's getting worse and worse. And they're like, but everything should be getting better. We've identified what the problem is, and we've got all these really good medications. It's not helping. It's an epidemic. Why? Why? I'm going to ponder a couple of thoughts about that. First and foremost, we need nutrients to keep our mental health stable. We're not absorbing. Had that discussion earlier. Second, we're not around people anymore. We're isolated. We can't grow that way. Nothing grows well in isolation. That's science. We know this as a fact. We have to pull our people together, pull our families back together, create healthy social environments for everyone in our lives, and make sure that you're surrounded by healthy social environment. All right, and the last thing is fear. So I'm going to talk just a basic about fear. You know, I'm going to run into that car in Huntsville, okay? A little fearful, right? That's, again, that fear is mental, affecting the vagus nerve. It's affecting our body. It's doing all the things that we talked about earlier. But fear can actually get stuck in our brain. I'm afraid to say something. I'm afraid to stand in front of an audience. I'm afraid to talk to that person. I'm afraid to, okay? And we just keep building on whatever that underlying fear was, whatever it was, public speaking or, being put down by somebody or not being heard. That's a huge one. In today's culture, because we're so isolated, we're not heard anymore. And we're afraid to say anything because someone's going to put their hand in our face and say, you're canceled. Doesn't feel good. So we're afraid. And that fear stifles us. There's some Bible verses, but I won't go there. You know what they are. All right. So what can I do? So let's look at some food. We've slashed our we have slashed our sugar intake. Sugar produces dopamine in our brain, okay? So if you've stopped sugar and you're just starting to feel down about it, it's because sugar produces dopamine, and if you stop taking the dopamine or the sugar in, your dopamine's going downhill. All right? It leads to cravings. It leads to sadness and anxiety. Wonderful stuff, that. Nausea, fatigue. Suggestion, how many of y'all are off sugar? Okay. Start bringing your sugar levels down, but do it gradually. Did you know that if you get your sugar levels down a little bit, the candida doesn't have a thing to eat and it's starving and it doesn't like you? So for the first few days or maybe even a couple of weeks, you're not going to feel good either. You're still not going to feel good. But the minute that candida realizes that it's lost that fight and you've won it, you don't crave the sugars anymore. You don't even want them. Because it's not you craving those sugars, it's the candida craving the sugar. It's inside of you going, feed me. It's not you. You get that candida under control. It's supposed to be there. It has a job. Candida's job is to be like Pac-Man and eat the bad bacteria and eat toxins that we happen to digest, okay? It has a job, but it takes every advantage it can to grow exponentially. If you've ever made bread and put yeast in some sugar, whoosh, grows. So this is what you have to do. You have to go slow. Just cut down a little bit of the sugar in that drink that you've been drinking. Just cut down a little bit and, maybe not have quite as many sugar things that you're eating. Maybe cut down to dessert once a week. It will be important because if you're not doing that, you're still going to have foggy brain and you're still going to have that blah, I don't have energy feeling. But do it slowly. And if you have cut out sugar, for those of you who have cut out sugar, if you're not feeling good, it's because you did it too fast. All right. How many of you got plant-based? I should see everybody's hand in here now. Everybody's here for a vegan and vegetarian festival, right? So we should see plant-based eaters. Awesome. So when you went plant-based, or maybe you've always been, have you ever noticed that you're just kind of sluggish, don't have the energy? There are actually reasons for that. When you eat vegetarian and vegan, you're not going to get enough vitamin B12. Oh no, not enough vitamin B12. What does that mean? It means you have to make sure you're eating things that are fortified with vitamin B12, okay? Our gut actually produces it. If our microbiome is healthy, the gut actually produces vitamin B12 for us. Isn't that amazing? How many people have you heard go and get vitamin B12 shots? Makes them have more energy, right? Problem? Their gut's not healthy enough to produce it for them. And that's what it's supposed to be doing, is producing the vitamin B12 for them, as well as them getting it in their food. So make sure you're eating foods that nutritional yeast and things like that are fortified with B vitamins. Vitamin D. Please eat your green leafy vegetables. I'm sure you're doing that already, but get a lot of those in because they're really good for you. Oh, I know, they don't taste good, but they're really healthy for you. Green leafy vegetables, and get outside. Maybe not today. It's awful hot. All right. Legumes and whole grains are really good. Dried fruit, high in vitamin D and iron. We have a iron deficiency a lot of times. So we'll want to do the iron stuff. Calcium is another one. I think I put that up there. Make sure you're watching your calcium because sometimes we don't get enough calcium in our diet. And make sure you're eating complete proteins. I know all of you know what a complete protein is, right? It's not bacon. Okay. It's not pork. It's not chicken. A complete protein is a legume and a seed, and you have to have them both. You know, the peanut butter sandwich on whole wheat bread. No, I'm not telling you to go eat peanut butter on bread. What I'm saying is peanuts are a legume and bread is a grain or a seed. You want to put both of those pieces together in order to get a whole protein. If you're not getting a whole protein, it's not healthy. Should get that first thing in the morning. Whole proteins in the morning. That will boost your energy for the day. Didn't know that, did you? Right. So we are still trying to eat well and still feeling rotten. How many of y'all don't drink caffeine? How many of you drink caffeine and say, I'm trying to quit? There you go. There's the ones I'm seeing. Everybody wants to quit caffeine. When you cut out caffeine, that first day of cutting out caffeine, you are going to have a headache of your life. It is not going to like you. It takes 3 to 4 days of no caffeine to get that headache to go away. Caffeine's also a diuretic, so it can cause other problems like dehydration. So, how do I do this? Cut down slowly. Just take it one bite at a time. Just cut back a little bit. If you go too fast, you might have some problems, okay? But if you take it down slowly, cut down to half of that cup that you normally drink, cut down to a quarter of that cup you normally drink, and just keep going slowly down. And you will find that your body will be able to pick up, because you know what happens when you don't drink caffeine? You know what happens? I'm tired. I need my caffeine. Because our body has said, yeah, we don't need to keep you moving. You're drinking that stuff. That chemical is keeping you going. So we don't need to do that anymore. We don't need to keep you moving. So it's going to take time for your body to catch up and say, oh, I guess I'm going to have to be involved in the keeping you awake part. Okay. All right, carbs. Carbs, carbs, carbs. There are 2 kinds of carbs, and half of the people know this and half the people don't. There are complex carbs, and there are simple carbs. Now, if I eat vegetables, I'm on a high carbohydrate diet because everything is carbs. Every vegetable, every fruit, unless it's a protein, a meat protein, it's a carb. How do you cut out carbs? Reality is you don't cut out carbs. You cut out the simple carbs. Wait a minute, Dr. Berry, fruit is a simple carb and I like fruit and I need fruit. You're right. So you can't cut out carbs. Wait a minute. But what about those low carb diets? You know, they want you all on all the protein and I don't know the name of them, but we can cut down on the simple carbs, but we're not cutting carbs out of our diet. Just cut down on the pastries. Oh, that's sugar. Just cut down on the breads, okay? Just cut down on some of those simple carbs. If you eat white rice, change it to brown rice. That takes it from a simple carb to a complex carb. Simple as that. I'm still eating rice. I'm just eating a more complex rice that my body has to work harder to turn into energy. Now, if you have cut down on carbs, you might find that you have some mood changes. That's a really common situation. Our moods are connected directly to carbohydrates. Why? Because our brain eats carbohydrates. Our brain is our hungriest organ in our body, the hungriest. It eats 40% of everything you eat has to go to the brain, of those nutrients that you happen to absorb. And if your gut's not healthy and you're not absorbing, you can kind of see the pattern, right? Okay. So if our brain needs to eat 40% of what we absorb, our mood can change really bad if we're not eating healthy. And it loves carbohydrates. Yes, carbohydrates, which everybody is trying to cut out. Don't eat carbs. They're not good for you. No, you don't even know what a carb is if you think you have to stop eating carbs. You're just going to eat meat all day? No, that's not good for you. All right. When you go on a low carb diet, a lot of times people feel bad because they went too low and all they're eating is meat. So what I want to suggest is that we, cut out some of those simple carbs, but not so much of the carbs in general, because we don't know what that means anyway. All right. You've amped up your fiber intake. Okay, for people who have amped up their fiber intake, if you have not eaten fiber for a long time, you have an enzyme that you normally have in your body that helps to manage the fiber that is no longer being produced. So when the body has a change, and maybe we've gone and started eating differently, we start feeling kind of sluggish down here, it's because the enzymes to manage what we're eating in our change of what we've eaten, the enzymes aren't there. So our body doesn't know what to do with the food, and it takes time. So you want to give it some time for your body to catch up. We're a dynamic individual, okay? The body's like, okay, I got to keep you wait a minute, you made a change. Now I got to balance you back out. And then it's like, oh, no, you made another change, and I got to balance you back out. That's what your body's doing all the time to keep you on your feet. It's all the time, working hard to keep you on your feet. Every little change you make creates an issue for your body to have to rebalance. So when you make those changes, do them slowly, do them gradually, give your body a chance. Fiber is really good. There are two kinds of fiber. There's soluble fiber and insoluble fiber. You get them when you eat whole foods. You get all of those. Soluble fiber does a couple of different things. It lowers your cholesterol. It helps with diabetes and insulin. Soluble fiber, soluble fiber is great for absorbing liquid to keep your stools healthy, so you're not constipated. Unsoluble fiber also does a few special things, and one of those things, and probably the most important thing for you to learn today, is that it feeds the microbiome. Insoluble fiber is prebiotic fiber. So you've seen it on TV, get your prebiotics. All it means is eat good fiber. You don't have to spend extra money. Buy something healthy at the store, okay? Start making homemade food, real food. Every vegetable you eat has some good, healthy prebiotic fiber in it. Onions and garlic, prebiotic fiber. Leeks and asparagus, prebiotic fiber. It's in almost every vegetable you eat, so take advantage of it. All right, fiber. Fiber sometimes makes us feel a little bloaty. Give it some time. Your body will eventually begin to develop those enzymes, and you'll be able to eat the fiber without the problem. Take it slow. Give your body a chance to balance. All right. Last but not least, almost last, I'm doing good, sir. Last but not least, you can be evaluated. Be evaluated for malabsorption. Be evaluated for leaky gut, stress-induced health issues, the body-gut axis concerns, the brain-gut axis concerns, and subclinical autoimmune, which is testable. Our office is able to find subclinical autoimmune before you ever get a full autoimmune issue. You need to reach us. You can reach us at this address. I will be available. You can come talk to me for the next 6 minutes. That's me. Thank you for listening to me jabber. Y'all have a great evening. Be blessed.